I know that it's not our job to ever change others, but sometimes, sometimes I feel like I could really step in and help you. And this is also a tricky thing.
This is why I am a life coach. And it's also why my family is always saying, get your God tentacles off the world. You are not here to fix people. Because it's so tempting to like try to put it right, but it's out of integrity. Because if I ask myself, I need to change that person, is it true? It's never true. It's like when you suffer, I don't, it's not my turn. That's somebody else's game to play. However, the whole you're attacking my way of life thing is actually true, because if I stand in my truth, despite what you think, it creates a shockwave. And I loved seeing this during the pandemic when we had the reckoning on race that rose up in the United States, to look at the ugliest, some of the most evil things ever done on this very evil doing earth. And people who'd been suffering for it from ancestrally for hundreds of years, finally standing up and saying, we will not do this your way anymore. And it really got my attention. I'll tell you, I didn't think I was racist, but I really, really started figuring out where my privilege was and where I wasn't seeing other people. And it was a bracing shock to learn that I hadn't been in full integrity because I didn't take the time to learn the truth of other people's lives. So when they stood up, it caused me to change. And some people might actually feel threatened by that. But like when I stood up and said, my son with Down syndrome is a wonderful, perfect being, and I will not be ashamed of him. A lot of people were like, what? And then they were like, okay. And they changed without much hassle, because I just wasn't going into the cultural mindset, and it helped them find their way out of it.
And you speak a lot in the book too, how often it's just small committed groups of people who drive. And you speak about, I forgot the name of the shape that looks like a hexagon. Yes. The fractals that just abound in nature. And how, could you speak to that for a moment? Because when I was reading it, I was like, oh, Martha, like this is just muscle.
When you start having mystical experiences, and you also have, we're trained in social science, you go looking for the explanation, and it's in nature. It's all in nature. It's in physics and it's in geology. Fractal forms are actually the rule in nature. A fractal form is a pattern that repeats itself almost perfectly, but not absolutely, at many, many different levels of size. So a tree has a certain shape and size. A branch from that tree will have a similar shape and size, but smaller. A twig from that tree will have a similar size and shape, but smaller. So fractals are shapes that reoccur over and over and over again at bigger and bigger levels of just plain size. So our nervous systems look a lot like the galaxy clusters that we see around us. It's
amazing.
And I believe that our behavior does that as well. So your behavior in any, like say you're really hustling yourself and you really try to please people, you're going to gather around you people who want to be pleased and other people who sell out to please them. So there'll be a friendship group of people who are similar. And then there'll be a bigger social group. Say you all join a cult because it feels so great to you. And then there are a dozen cults and the whole area starts to be that way. When you break out of a negative behavior into your integrity, the fractal of your life changes. And as a result, the structures around you sometimes can crack up, like mine did when I left Mormonism. But your integrity will start to fractal out around you, and you will draw in people who are seeking their own integrity and who are stepping into their own truth. And the sweetness of the community you find when you think I thought I was all out by myself, right? I lost all my family, all my friends, my marriage, everything. And then it just was a matter of time and constancy before I gathered around me, or a group formed by itself around me of friends and loved ones who are beautifully in their integrity. And it's just, boy, the world becomes a wonderful place when that happens.
So the one shift, it creates so much. We don't even know where it ends. Like we don't even know who it impacts, people whose names we won't know. I mean, And
Yeah.
I love how you shared in the book that, when you're out of your integrity, one of two things happens, especially if you're playing up to people. Either you meet people or you're around people you don't want to be playing up to, like,
Yeah.
because they're not your people.
Right.
Or in addition to, you're around people who are faking it like you are. And then you're in this group of this fractal of fakery. That's mine.
Yes. Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah. Excellent.
Of fakery, and then it's misery, and then you're like, why am I here? And then you're like, gosh, why am I drinking so much? Or why can't I sleep?
Right.
Or why am I causing problems in my marriage, even though that's a sweet part? Because I'm just it's like the integrity. Like, I love how you always come back to this analogy of the airplane, and you're like, it's not good or bad. It doesn't mean that there is something really here to be morally evaluated. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's just like we're losing lift or the plane won't take off. What is wrong? I've got to go find the part that's wrong. And we can always be led to it very simply by what's distressing us the most. It's this wonderful, that's why you realize people say, if the universe is benevolent, why is there suffering? Because it wants to bring us into benevolence. And the only thing that will reliably get our attention enough to make us actually change is suffering, something that feels bad, and the opportunity to feel better. And that's all suffering is. I don't mean to, there are a lot of people out there right now who are suffering a lot from many situations. And I don't mean to trivialize that or say it's their fault in any measure whatsoever. But I've seen people from all over the world and all kinds of circumstances find their way out of suffering by finding the truth within themselves. The classic example, if you want one, is Nelson Mandela in a completely discriminatory, evil system. He gets locked in prison. He's an angry young activist, but in prison, he becomes an absolute paragon of integrity. And he learns Afrikaans and he becomes compassionate to the guards. I was in college when he was still at Robben Island locked up. And we were all picketing to get him to, we were marching to free Nelson Mandela. Not even a picture of him was allowed out of Robben Island. Nothing was allowed out. And yet the fractal of his integrity shook the world, changed the world. And that right there is an example of what we can be if we decide to be true.
And you say in the book to pay attention to anything that causes even slight suffering within you. And you even say, are you sitting comfortably? And you ask people that in an audience. Yes, I'm comfortable. And we don't even we're so used to it. We're so used to that's how life is. And I've even had people say to me, women are just wired for guilt. It's how it's like women are meant to feel. I'm like, I don't feel guilty.
Is that true? How does that thought make you feel? It makes me feel like drinking. Okay, maybe not then. And
then, Martha, this question I have to ask you, is there ever an exception? Because people will tell you got to do the right thing, right? You got to do the right thing. And so, for example, that could be travel to Australia for a wedding for a relative, because that's what people do, or you should show up at the baby shower. That's 2 hours away because she's a friend for a long time. And this is the most important thing that's happening in her life.
Yeah.
Or, someone disagrees with you, but they have a very, very, compelling argument, and you kind of feel like bad for them. And so you'll let it, maybe you just let this one go.
Yeah, I have a friend who calls this integrity light.
Oh, integrity light?
Yeah, like LITE, like diet food or whatever. I at the end of my first year of not lying at all, when I lost every friend and loved one I ever had, except for my kids. At the end of that year, I thought, if I were living in Germany during World War II and I had hidden some Jews in the basement and the Gestapo came and said, do you have Jews in the basement? I would have said no and felt moral about it. So it's not like there's a rigid set of things that you absolutely have to do.
Right.
It's much more like the Asian model of flowing with the benevolence of the universe. So your friend is having a shower and you stop and say, what actually feels most delicious to me? Is the joy on my friend's face when I'm there really what I want? Or is it to spend the weekend resting because I don't feel well? There is no hard and fast rule about anything. It's always a decision in the moment. So I call this your inner compass. It swings toward integrity always, but it doesn't always swing toward the same behaviors. So people say, oh, I was so sure this marriage was right for me, and now it's gone wrong. Well, it was right. And now it's right to end it. The idea that something has to be permanent, unchanging, and always is a rigid belief set that's based on fear of not knowing, which is, that's the ego. The soul isn't afraid of not knowing. It's like, ooh, I'll see when I get there.
Right.